Hello, I'm Chris Burns, and welcome to The Network. Hard talk with a matrix of newsmakers. The headlines. With two of the gunmen in the recent Paris attacks having become radicalized in prison, new measures are aimed at preventing jails from becoming terror breeding grounds. Schools are also in focus. Radicalization is blamed on a deadly mix of social networking, Islamic extremist preachers, and inmates who are hardened criminals. Sociologists say it's not about religion, but feeling shut out of society. The French government has announced an 11-point plan to reinforce awareness of Republican values. They include sensitizing teachers to what causes radicalization and reaching out to students as well as parents. But will these tactics work? How much can schools adapt their curricula to fight radicalization by encouraging more inclusiveness and integration in society, as well as the job market? Now, wired into this edition of the network here at the European Parliament in Brussels, Claude Moraes, British Socialist Member of the European Parliament and Chairman of the Parliament's Committee on Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs. Sonya Reines-Djivanides, she's the director of the Brussels office of the group Search for Common Ground, a conflict resolution NGO. And Bleri Lleshi, who is a youth worker based here in Brussels, and as well he's a blogger and an author on youth issues. Welcome to all of you. Let's start with a question to all of you, starting with Claude. There are two summits coming up this month. Of European leaders and of world leaders on this issue, on how to deal with extremism. What would you like them to say and to do? And who's been failing to do this job up to now? Claude.
Well, first, leaders can't do everything. It's not a top-down issue. But as far as leaders can do something, first of all, they have to keep all communities safe. That includes Muslim communities as well as all other communities. And second, they have to be realistic, talk to people and not fool people that radicalisation is a very deep issue. The causes of terrorism are very deep, and they have to be realistic about how long it's going to take to deal with that very tough issue. Okay,
Sonya, what would you like to see the leaders do, and who's failed up to now?
I don't know who's failing, but nobody's winning. I think it's a real opportunity to take a comprehensive review, look at the root causes, the push and pull factors, not stick a solution onto something that really needs to be reviewed in the economic, social, identity, the full scheme of the human society. Okay, you'd like to see them talk about that. Bleri, can you point any fingers at who's failed up to now? What would you like to see these leaders do this month?
Yes, politicians are failing. I mean, if we look at the problems that Europe is facing at this very moment, if we look at racism, discrimination, poverty, unemployment and so forth, that's already, I think, a huge problem because we are not offering perspectives right here to this youth. The second one is the foreign policy of Western states of EU. And the third thing is the media who is focusing on a tiny minority within the Muslim community and not on the majority of the Muslims.
Okay, let's shift to some of the action that some of the governments have taken up to now. The French government has come forward with a new effort to fight radicalization. It includes a website giving the sort of the reality check of these jihadist movements, showing the myth and then trying to show the reality of what these movements are actually doing. Do you think this kind of approach is really going to work? Let me ask Sonya, because you've worked in other countries on this.
Our experience is that media, website, television program in and of itself is not going to be effective. It's how you engage with communities. It's how you give them a voice, give them opportunity, a way that they can see a hope for their future. So just watching something isn't going to change behavior. It needs to be a comprehensive, engaged approach. Okay, but do we think that governments should be doing this, or should it actually be civil society, Claude?
Well, governments have to fund things.
Yeah.
That's realistic.
Well, that's true.
Where we had really good measures in the United Kingdom, for example, some of these measures have been defunded. You had whole community approaches, and they include going into mosques, and they include local authority action, and it's very important that de-radicalisation measures in schools, colleges, and so on are funded by government, but then government takes a distance from that.
Okay. How do you do this in the schools, for instance, Bleri? How do you prevent radicalization in the schools? What should be done there?
first of all, you have to, as I said before, you have to offer perspective to these young people over here because they are born and raised here in European countries.
So it's a question of opportunity then.
Yeah, first of all, yes, I think so. To tackle, for example, in Brussels, we have more than 30% of the population living in poverty. We have neighborhoods where you have until 50% of the youth who are jobless.
And you've seen that on the ground.
30% of the young people who leave the school without a degree. So, I mean, before getting to the school itself, we need to offer these opportunities. And then when they come to school, then you have to deal with the teachers, with the community. How can you strengthen these young people that they focus right here in this society?
Okay, so how are we going to, Mr. Policymaker, how are we going to do this? How are we going to offer that opportunity?
Well, alienation is part of it, poverty and so on, but so is a cult-like radicalisation. You know, both are part of this. And how you deal with it is carefully. So the measures in the United Kingdom, we've seen it in Denmark, we've seen it in France. The most important thing is getting the best model, and you need to share the best practice. At the moment, most member states of the European Union don't have any anti-radicalisation measures, and yet thousands of young people are actually fighting abroad and are alienated.
Sonya, there was mentioned the Danish government program, which they're going to spend millions to set up a youth outreach, an exit center for youth who want to quit the jihadist movement. They're going to fight online recruiting by some of these jihadist groups. Do you think that's really going to work in Denmark?
Denmark's a small country. I'd be curious what sort of analysis they did to put that together, whether they engaged the society full spectrum about what solutions that they see.
Yeah, well, they have been criticized for not really engaging enough with Muslim groups there.
Our experience is that a collaborative approach yields a lot more than an adversarial one. So how do you involve people that are part of the problem and to be part of the solution?
Okay. Bleri, what do you think about that?
I think it's very important to get involved the Muslim community, because I think if Muslim community failed somewhere, it failed in informing its own members, the Muslims. Because we see, for example, in the case of UK, young people leaving to Syria, they buy a Muslim for Dummies on Amazon, so they are actually not well informed on their religion.
Sonya.
And as the policymakers meet on this, I know there's an urgency because of the grim start to the new year and violence everywhere to want to put a quick solution to this. And I think it's really important that we look at the what's working in other places, what's working in Europe, what's not, other models outside, Indonesia, Kyrgyzstan.
Claude, you've called for a counterterrorism, counter-radicalization roadmap. How fast should we be moving on this? When do you want to see results?
Well, very fast, because people have to feel safe. So
we could be talking and talking and talking.
No,
when are we going to act?
Anti-terrorism measures have to be now. And national member states are doing that now, because people have to feel safe, and that includes Muslim communities. But then you have to have anti-radicalisation measures and check the causes of terrorism, because that's for the long haul.
But
and if you don't do that, other terrorist attacks will happen.
So you're saying this is a national thing, or can we actually get something on a European level?
It has happened nationally up till now, but we need to cooperate, and we need to also cooperate on anti-radicalisation measures, which has not happened up till now.
Sonya.
There's a need to invest in communities, and there's a need to have programs that invest and make commitments over the long term, so that this isn't, we don't fool ourselves that we're going to be able to solve this tomorrow.
Bleri, I think of the Spanish Civil War, where a lot of people went to fight because of this romanticized view. It's similar there. I think these jihadist groups are pushing this sort of romanticized view. How do you combat that on the ground?
Yeah, by having politicians who have vision. At this moment, we don't have them. I mean, if we look at Belgium in this case, I mean, you have the politicians who decided to put more police in the streets, to put even the army in the streets. What they are doing, actually, they are provoking. They are responding to extremism with extremism, and that is not the right answer, because actually, young people who are adopting to leave to Syria, they will be leaving because they will see this as a provocation.
Claude?
You can't have excuses for leading to terrorist attacks. It's really important to have a sense of responsibility, so let's have that as a baseline. And then above that, let's look for the causes of radicalisation. But let's not have excuses for terrorism, but let's understand that radicalisation happens to a minority of young people. Muslim communities are enormous in places like Britain and France. It's a minority that are radicalised.
Sonya, last word.
Every human being has a choice, and how do we help people make other choices? Nobody's born a terrorist.
Thanks, Sonya. I'm so sorry we're out of time. I'd like to thank our guests, Claude Moraes, Sonya Reines-Djivanides, and Bleri Lleshi. I'm Chris Burns, and until next time, thanks for connecting with The Network.